Since 2013, the Los Angeles Dodgers have become one of the biggest winners in all of sports. They're a sizable force to be reckoned with and, more importantly, a consistent one. 7 straight years as champions of the NL West, along with 2 National League pennants, is one sure way to turn some heads. What makes them even more interesting is how they've been able to build such a consistently successful franchise, through methods they've very nearly perfected. I think a lot of what makes this organization so interesting is especially relevant today, given the current public perception of ownership in Major League Baseball. Today, we're going to examine how the Dodgers became a professional powerhouse, and how other Major League teams should be paying close attention. We have to start by going back to 2004.
Calls for Dodgers owner Frank McCourt to sell the team.
First of all, there shouldn't be an investigation.
At stake is the ownership of the legendary Dodgers.
Everyone knows a ship can't properly function with a drunk captain, excluding Rick Sanchez. The Dodgers' drunk captain starting in 2004 was named Frank McCourt, who had purchased the team for $430 million. $9 million up front, and the rest financed with debt. I'm really not sure if letting a potential owner do this is common practice, but if that's a red flag for me, then I think it's fair to say that it should have been for the league too. Anyways, McCourt and his wife lived a very luxurious and expensive lifestyle. They were not responsible spenders, they went on a spending spree using the team itself as collateral, and racked up an unbelievable amount of debt. The two later divorced, and these financial problems came to light for everyone to see. The headlines to follow were an embarrassment for the league, as well as the Dodgers and, of course, their fan base. CEO husband fires CEO wife after divorce is the second dumbest thing in Hollywood after the release of Jack and Jill isn't really the headline Dodgers fans craved for. So the team filed for bankruptcy and were sold to the Guggenheim Baseball Group in the middle of the 2012 season, partnering with several other co-owners, including Magic Johnson. With the boogeyman gone at this point, it was time for a new era in Los Angeles. Free from ignorant ownership and embarrassing headlines. No longer were the days of letting superstars like Adrian Beltre slip through the cracks for relatively small contracts because ownership didn't want to open their wallets to help better the team. No, the captains of this team were completely sober and were prepared to do whatever it took to put a winning team on the field. I can dedicate an entire video to just the new Dodgers ownership and how so many problems in baseball would be relieved or fixed if owners adopted some of their practices. I'm going to indirectly back up my argument throughout this video as we talk more about how this franchise was rebuilt, but I think this 2012 quote from new co-owner Magic Johnson will show you exactly what I mean. This was from a 2012 press conference after ownership cut stadium parking prices. We're not here to gouge the fans just because we paid a nice sum for the franchise. We're going to pour money into the team and the fan experience. We're here to win. We don't want the fans to think just because we wrote a big check we're going to stop now. We're out here to win and we want to win for the fans. I don't want that question like now we're short on money or something. That's not the case. I want everybody to understand I came here to win. It's a new day in Dodgertown here. Of course, it's just a commonly used PR tactic for owners to say these kinds of things. If Bob Nutting can say it, it's really not that interesting. But what differentiates the average owner and those of the Dodgers are that they then chose to put their money and their strategic initiative where their mouth was. The opening day payroll for the 2012 Dodgers under Frank McCourt was around $95 million. The opening day payroll for the 2013 Dodgers under new ownership was over $216 million. Ownership didn't even wait for the offseason to get started to throw some green at the team. 2 months after they took over, they re-signed All-Star Andre Ethier to a 5-year extension, and then only a few weeks later signed international talent Yasiel Puig to a 7-year contract. By the time August rolled around, I guess they got bored, so they decided to screw around and completed the largest trade in franchise history, acquiring Josh Beckett, Adrian Gonzalez, and Carl Crawford from the Boston Red Sox, while taking on almost $250 million in salary in the process. These moves didn't net them a playoff berth in 2012, but if you were a Dodger fan at this point, you were pretty excited to see what would come in the offseason heading into 2013. Looking back now, that first offseason under new ownership was a success in terms of player acquisition, but even more importantly, setting the tone for the future of the franchise. Not only did they give Zach Greinke the largest contract for a starting pitcher in history at this point, but they also acquired guys like Hyun-Jin Ryu, J.P. Howell, and Skip Schumacher, who would each go on to have really solid 2013 seasons. As of today, though, it's unconfirmed whether or not they wanted to one-up the Angels after they signed Jason Vargas that same winter. This financial powerhouse would continue to spend money over the years, even dethroning the New York Yankees in 2014 as the team with the highest payroll for the first time since '98. We could talk about money forever, but if you were to look at the projected 2020 Dodgers, a large majority of their starting players are guys who were either signed to minor league deals or guys that were drafted by the Dodgers and developed in the minor leagues of that same organization. So now, we have to talk about the most interesting aspect of the new and improved Los Angeles Dodgers: player development. Most people who watch sports know exactly how the draft is structured, giving lesser-off teams a better chance at a brighter future by letting them draft players first. That's not even mentioning the newer treats given to low-revenue baseball teams like competitive balance picks. Being as consistently successful as the Dodgers have been has meant that they've drafted no earlier than the 18th pick since their dominant run started. Even still, they've had a top 5 farm system for the past half-decade, and were ranked 3rd best heading into 2020. The system was made so that this kind of dominance couldn't thrive, or at least thrive consistently, but the Dodgers have found a way to do nearly everything right when it comes to constructing a baseball team. The next good chunk of this video is pulled out of an incredible article by Kyle Glaser from Baseball America, who wrote about the Dodgers and the complex science that is player development. The team's main resource and advantage is money. It allows for the proper funding up and down, from hiring the best coaches and trainers, to constructing the best facilities, to providing the best player nutrition, and without that, or at least without the willingness to spend, it would be nearly impossible to replicate this machine. Baseball player development is a step-by-step process. This isn't like the NFL or NBA where you can pop a player in the microwave like popcorn for 2 minutes and they're ready to go. MLB players are like actual corn that require tender love and care as you help them grow in the farm system. The first step boils down to hiring the right employees to help develop that talent. The Dodgers are one of only 2 major league teams to rank in the top 7 for number of scouts, both professional and amateur, and for the number of employees in player development, positions like coaches, analysts, and such. Once they hire the right people, those people are themselves developed and trained properly to fit into the organization. The Dodgers heavily analyze the employees they're going to hire to heavily analyze future employees, to a much greater extent than most, if not all, franchises. This organization takes its process very seriously, and they understand that it takes an investment of not only capital, but time in order to generate this kind of consistent success in a sport that really doesn't see it very often. Now, acquiring the actual players begins with scouting, and the Dodgers scouting department has taken an interesting approach when scouting out position players. They don't look for power-hitting behemoths, but above all else, focus on plate discipline and contact ability, believing that power is a tool that a hitter can develop later on. Put it to you this way: is it easier to teach someone to hit a baseball or to hit a baseball hard?
Okay, that didn't really make sense, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Homegrown stars like Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager were drafted being known as more contact-driven hitters, and as they were climbing the ranks through the organization, developed a power stroke to go along with their existing skills. It seems like this kind of approach is paying off. These high-contact guys have much higher talent floors, and if they find their power stroke, even higher ceilings than a lot of power prospects. Now that they've actually brought this young talent into the organization, the real fun begins. Once a Dodger draftee joins their minor league system, they're in for a relatively rich minor league experience. The team's minor league ballparks at all levels have been built within the last 25 years and rank high amongst their competitors in terms of quality. Starting in 2020, the plan was to send traveling chefs with most of their minor league affiliates, and the teams that didn't get one would even be catered food from high-end providers like Whole Foods. This goes an unbelievably long way when training and developing athletes. Combine that rare high-quality nutrition with some of the best trainers and medical staff on the market, hand in hand with some of the best facilities available, and you have yourself a breeding ground for successful baseball players at the professional level. The transition from one level of the organization to the next is also something the Dodgers do exceptionally well. In his article, Glaser writes, "Communication, information synchronization, and player individualization have become hallmarks of the Dodgers organization. The effect has fostered an easy transition for new arrivals who don't have to worry about deciphering unfamiliar scouting reports or adjusting their pregame routines. They can just go out and play. This is absolutely huge for young players adjusting to new surroundings. The very act of picking up your belongings and heading to the next stop in your journey to the big leagues isn't as easy as you might think. Reading a transaction note that a player was promoted to a higher level of the organization isn't much of an insight into the actual process. Things like using the same scouting reports from level to level and not requiring that players change their pregame routines is something that's so great for minor league development in my opinion. I think all major league teams should do things like this across the board. There is one last quick thing the organization excels at that's extremely important in a team game. You can have the most money, the most nutritious foods, the best staff, and the nicest facilities, but if you don't establish a positive culture in the workplace, then you just have a soulless assembly line. Soulless assembly lines do not produce consistent winners. Walker Buehler has talked about how he saw his minor league coaches. He called them egoless, people just trying to help him and his teammates evolve as players, and how that kind of positive reinforcement is key for young athletes. He made comparisons to high school and college coaches who sometimes try and put their personal stamp on you as a player, and how that's much less productive than when players and coaches are pulling on the same rope and always on the same page. This goes back again to hiring the right people, the right coaches, the right staff, who know how to connect with players and help develop them. On the topic of the relationship between coaches and players, Dodgers farm director Will Rhymes was quoted saying, "At the end of the day, we're trying to empower our players, so we want coaches who are positive and who exemplify the values we think are important in our players, creating lifelong learners, really high baseball IQ, people who have tremendous work ethic. That's the environment we want our players to be in." Well, that kind of environment helped put a team on the field in 2019 that was easily one of the greatest they've had since they moved out of Brooklyn in '57. And it's going to put great Dodger teams on the field for years to come. Now that we've talked a lot about the new Los Angeles Dodgers, can we directly compare them to their old counterparts? I tried a few different techniques to quantify the different types of star power between the old and new Dodger regimes. My first method was to see how much the McCourt regime was paying per win above replacement for their players, and compare that with the same value in the Magic regime, but I ran into some issues on the data accounting side of things. After a few more trial and error methods, I decided on one that could get my point across while taking a fraction of the time. I took a look at the Dodgers wins above replacement leaders on Fangraphs from when McCourt took over in 2004 up through the 2019 season. I only recorded the players who posted WARs above 3. This is the threshold at which Fangraphs considers players to be good by the metric. I had to factor out the eligible players in 2004 that were required before the McCourt regime started, and I also gave each of the leaders in the 2012 transition season to the McCourt total, as they were all acquired during his tenure. Starting when new ownership took over, it was pretty straightforward, being most of the productive players at this point were fresh blood acquired by the new owners, but there was one big outlier who consistently popped up over the years, and that was Clayton Kershaw. It's not like he was posting negligent WAR totals after the ownership switch. This was prime Kershaw, so I had to decide on what to do about him. I wasn't sure crediting his WAR to the Magic total over the McCourt total was a good way to do it, given he was drafted and developed while McCourt was in control, so I'll show you guys 4 different sub-methods, each still proving one absolute truth. So with the minimal necessary adjustments, while granting Kershaw's WAR totals by season to whoever was controlling the team at the time, the McCourt regime had good players that accumulated 173.6 wins above replacement over 9 seasons, which is 19.3 per season. The Magic regime has had good players accumulate 237.3 wins above replacement, or 33.9 per season, which is over 75% better. Pretty clear victory for Magic here. But Kershaw was the product of the McCourt system, so let's look at the next matchup. Let's take Kershaw's WAR contribution out of the equation completely. Here are the new totals. The new Dodgers still reign supreme. Now let's just try taking his contributions out of the Magic era and let McCourt keep his prize stars winnings. This should get McCourt over the top this time. Oh, the new Dodgers are still way better. Alright, McCourt's a loser. You know what, let's even give him the WAR he accumulated while playing for the Magic regime, seeing that if his organization hadn't drafted him, he wouldn't even be in the conversation. This should finally give him a win. And would you look at that, McCourt's finally got a win. And this is interesting because, oh boy. The new Dodgers are just a significantly more talented organization than the old Dodgers, and there's really no other way around it. Even with 2 fewer seasons in control of the team in this study, in terms of talent, the new improved Los Angeles Dodgers blow the old ones out of the water. I would have also liked to do it on a per year per dollar basis to account for the differences in payroll, so we could get an idea of how efficient each version of the franchise was, but due to time constraints I just couldn't make that happen, so I'm sorry about that. Now that we've went in depth into the machine that is the Los Angeles Dodgers organization, let's sum up what makes them such a force to be reckoned with. They have an incredibly talented roster at the major league level, one of the best if not the best on paper. If for whatever reason someone needs to be replaced, they have an incredibly talented and depth-filled minor league system that can fill in at the major league level, and have talented minor league replacements to fill in for the fill-ins. Their scouting and player development are so good that they can then continue to find talent to fill that minor league system as players move off the assembly line to the majors. And their owners are still willing to spend money to acquire major league ready talent, and have such a deep farm system that they can make big trades with these prospects to acquire major league talent as well. This system leaves nothing up to chance and does everything it can to cover its bases and grants the best possible chance that it can put a winning product on the field at any point in time. That's what an organization should do, and it's what all teams should be doing, even those that don't have the financials that the Dodgers do, or in some cases, just the will to finance this kind of operation. This new regime has done basically every single thing but win a World Series at this point. Even still, I think Dodger fans should expect a ring sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for watching if you made it this far. If you enjoyed the video at any point, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more sports content as we all try and cope with the craziness that is Major League Baseball right now. Thank you again, and I'll talk to y'all soon.